Welcome to the Essentials. I'm Rob Swinar. Today I have in a friend of mine that recently came out as a cross-dresser, and this is somebody that I would say is a man's man and extremely funny, is straight, and we developed a pretty good friendship, and at least to the point where he felt comfortable enough to tell me about the cross-dressing. So welcome.
Thank you.
The reason why I wanted to have him on was with all these podcasts basically is to tell the human side of people's stories, and this is something that isn't normally accessible to people. So this is why I had you on. So I guess what we should do is just go right to the beginning. When did this become something that you felt like you needed to do?
It's not nothing I ever felt like I needed to do. It's just kind of, I always felt the inclination towards it, like even in childhood. And it just kind of was something that always stayed with me throughout my life.
And what was the draw?
I honestly, that's a hard question to answer. It's just it just felt right. Doing that kind of thing or whatever kind of just made me feel better or more whole as a person.
Okay, so and then how what was your earliest memory of how, like, what is your first memory basically that you can think of that gave you that sense of being complete, I guess?
I remember the first time I can remember doing it was little, and I remember being in a laundry room and saw a pair of nylons there or whatever, and just was curious as to what that would feel like or whatever, right? And it just felt right. And then over the years or whatever, it's kind of weird because your conscious mind is saying, what you doing? This ain't right. This is wrong, or you're a fag or something like that. And but your subconscious mind just wants you to explore that or try it out, right? And it feels right. So it's weird.
How old were you, figure?
When I first started,
Yeah,
would have been six.
6.
Yeah.
Is it something that you did on your own, or did you have like a little girlfriend over or something like that?
It was always private. If anybody ever found out, it would have been the end of the world. Like, I would have killed myself, or I would have disappeared. Like, it was extremely shameful. It's something that I denied to myself, even that I actually did till a couple of years ago. Like, I couldn't even admit to myself that I was a cross-dresser up to a couple of years ago.
Yeah. How did so as a child you had this attraction, you indulged, I would assume, privately, constantly. How did that affect you when you became like a teenager and dealing with the normal craziness of hormones and all that? Because you're straight too,
Yeah.
so you're attracted to females, but you have that part of you that you gotta hide, or did you hide it? Like, how did you do it?
No, I definitely hid it. Nobody ever knew. Nobody, even if they met me, would never suspect. Like, it was a very private, personal thing. But I just felt this strong desire to explore that and do it, and I try as more like an appreciation of the woman form, and weirdly, it was like trying to make myself appear as feminine as possible, and the better I could do that, like the bigger the reward. Like, it wasn't like it's different for so many cross-dressers. I learned, like, some people it's just a fetish and it's a sex thing. Some people they feel they're a woman trapped in a man's body and go the full deal. For me, it's just another part of me, but given the world and the stigma and all that kind of thing. Because if you if I would have done that or whatever, like, and let people know or whatever as a child, I would have been beat up daily. I would have maybe been disowned by my parents. Who knows? Like, you know, it's a scary thing to, as a man or whatever, to let anybody know, because you're essentially giving up your man card. You're saying, you know, it's kind of hard to look at a man as a man if they do that. And I've had that in relationships too, where because I usually let everybody know, and there's been some situations where the women have said, yeah, you know, they can't get past that, even if they've never seen it. Just the idea that I do that. You know.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a bit.
And I understand it. I get it.
Yeah. How would it? Do you? How was your upbringing? Like, is there anything that triggered it, or like, do you even know? Like,
It's something I've looked inside about a lot. Like, why am I like this or whatever? Why do I do it? And if everything's a guess. Like, I grew up. My dad was. He's a man's man, and you know, ex-military and all that, and tough boys don't cry. Friggin', you know, you get hurt, you get up, brush it off, carry on, and that is how I am. But like with that you know, general male socialization or whatever, it's like that's how you are. You know, you don't you got to be tough at all times. You can't be weak. Being sensitive or feminine is seen as weak, so you're less of a man if you're like that. So I think I thought maybe by being pushed so hard to be a hardcore man's man as I was, maybe that might have made the need for it. I don't know. I've read some studies too on brain development in cross-dressers and transgendered, and the brain is actually different in like a regular straight dude and a cross-dresser and a transgender person. There's a difference in the brain, and maybe that's part of it too. Like, it's just I don't know.
your mom, how was the relationship with her?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because typical old school marriage, like the dad was the tough love and the rule maker, and mom was the nurturer, and you know, the love came from her. Dad didn't give hugs or anything like that. He's a tough dude, and mom gave all the affection.
The first relationship that you ended up having, that was like a serious relationship, that that you decided that you were comfortable enough to actually come out. That must how'd that go? It must have been bloody scary.
It was tricky as hell, and I was with her a long time, and she was really cool. We're friends to this day, and she just thought it was neat or interesting or whatever, and it didn't bother her at all, but she wasn't really a huge fan either. And but she was cool with it, and she did see me dressed, you know, and stuff like that, and that was the first person to ever see me that way, and so.
Was that like liberating? Was it free? Did it
was,
free?
Yeah, it was like it definitely helped me a lot. Like it made me feel like not such of a freak, maybe a little more normal and a little more acceptable in society. Like, that's how I felt about it. That's why it was so hard for me to actually accept that I was like that, because I did feel like an outcast or a freak, or like I wouldn't belong in the real world if anybody knew.
How did that, like, take me through the process of your thoughts when, because it sounds like you probably fought it quite a bit as far as the urge goes. So how did you know, like, what are you doing what are you doing in life or what have you, and then basically having this thought that I this urge, and take me through the process of, because it's not something that you're doing all the time, so you must get compelled to do it, and so just to kind of explain that.
What I've found is usually it comes at times of heavy stress and stuff like that. The urge is more there. and then also, besides having the urge, sometimes it's just nice to do. You know, it's like a relax. I feel relaxed and good when I'm that way. And one thing I've read a lot about too is people like me or whatever. They go, there's a huge shame associated with it, and so many people like me, and I've done it. You go through endless binges and purges. Like you kind of build up a collection of clothes or whatever, and then you feel guilty and ashamed, and you throw it all out, and you're never going to do it again. And time passes, and it's part of you, and so that you build up your collection again, and then you throw it away. And I've done that so many times, and like since I've got good with it, I don't see it ever changing or anything. I don't see me becoming more out with it or anything like that. Like it's gonna stay the way it is pretty much. But I just feel better about it.
Do you think it's like in a way it's just shedding the burden of being a man? Like, and a lot of people, like especially like women, women have a lot of stresses in society, and without a doubt, I mean, they're oppressed. But men also have a level of burden of, we have to be the breadwinners. We have to, take care of family. We have to go out there and take the dangerous jobs. We have to do, a lot of things that are hard. And, the mentality for most of us is always just suck it up and do it. But do you think by allowing yourself the feminine side that you're during a stress time that it could be because you're trying to shed, it feels good to basically shed that shit.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a good thought. Like I'd have to agree with that for sure. I see it like I used to see it as a weakness and it's something I needed to change, and now I see it as more of a strength, because in those times or whatever, it does give me a lot of strength. It recharges me, it refreshes me, and and then I'm stronger and I can take on all the shit that I gotta take on.
and then so you go through like how long of a process is it? Is it something like you'll dress up for a night?
Yeah, like it could be just like that. Like it could be at home chilling or whatever, and it can be different levels, right? Because like you don't have to do the full blown face and all that. That takes a lot of time and a lot of work. But like if you're just looking down at yourself and it's just clothes, like that's good enough until you hit a mirror. Then it's like, what the hell, it's pretty funny. It was creepy too, I can imagine. But yeah, and then sometimes you do the full process or whatever, and it's a lot of work because dudes are dudes, and learned a lot of skills.
Shout out to the women out there.
Learned a lot of skills over the years with makeup and clothes and what works and what doesn't, and how to change all that into something passable or whatever. And that's kind of like the ultimate goal when you do it and you go full out, is to be as passable as possible, as close to the real thing as you can.
So it's almost like a therapy. Well, it sounds like a therapy, basically.
Yeah, totally.
Some people, like I take up photography, and that's my therapy. For you feel that basically helps get you to a better place. Although the downside with it, like you've said, is that you'll go through that, you feel good, and then you'll start going down again, right?
Except for now that I've accepted that and got good with it, there is no more shame, there is no more guilt. Now it's only about protecting people in my life that could be potentially harmed by the knowledge that I do this, right? So, for that reason, I'm not very out about it or whatever, and I'm fine with that, I like at the same time too, like some people like me, they'll go to a mall or something and stuff like that, and for me, I think of like kids and stuff like that, and it's probably confusing for them to see, and I wouldn't want to do that, even though it can be argued that maybe they should see that, and to learn acceptance for people like that. But just for me personally, I just prefer to keep it private or whatever, or to an adult group at least, you know.
Which is why we have your voice slightly altered.
Yeah.
We were talking before, previous to the podcast, that when you started to find, well, go through the process of once you've accepted it, and you start finding out others do it. Tell me about the community, your thoughts of the community when you first went into it, and your experiences with that growth.
Yeah, I got out of a bad relationship, and I was trying to get stronger instead of, because like in the past in other relationships, if things went bad, I would turn to negative ways to heal, and this time I decided to be positive, and I decided to explore that side of me and learn more about it and why I'm like it and how other people have coped with it and stuff. And so there's a group in town here called Illusions, and it's more of like a social club for people like me. And then you got varying degrees of people, like from a guy just wearing a friggin' wig and it looks pretty creepy, and then to the person that like you can't even tell that they're a man, you know. So one of the people at the group, they had a degree in psychology, and it was actually just like me, a straight person, had relationships and stuff like that, and you know, and the same issues that came up, and everything like that. So we're actually kind of had so many other parallels, and so I call her she because that's how I always see her. But she is very helpful to me, and kind of started helping me get better with it. And then I started telling people as as I got more comfortable with it, and the people I trusted and people like that were important in my life, and I felt like it was fair for them to know or whatever, just to kind of let them into my world or whatever, right? And it just started. The more people that knew, that it seemed, the better I got with it, and that kind of thing, I guess. But
It would make sense. I mean, if a community knows who you are and accepts you, then it's got to be pretty freeing.
yeah.
With your relationships, obviously, you said that you've been able to tell some, and then others no, or you didn't have the comfort. We kind of talked about this again previous to the podcast. Is there an age thing in regards to relationship, like the women that are more open? Does age play a part in the acceptance?
Yeah, a huge part. From what I've found, honestly, fine 27 seems to be the wall. I haven't found a woman over 27 yet that doesn't give two shits about it. And so many that are under that age where they don't care at all. They just see me as a person, and they're cool with it. And everybody I date now, that's pretty much I tell them like right off the hop about it, just in case, out of respect for them, if they start to get feelings or whatever, and then all of a sudden you drop that bomb on them or whatever, right? So I just like to be open and honest.
And you're close to 40, right?
Yeah.
So you have the younger are more open, but with that, I'm sure that you're dealing with a maturity level that's slightly different too. Must not be so easy to cope with.
No, it's not. It's like it's frustrating because there are a lot of women interested in me, and it's like kind of like, I remember when I was younger, I was a little more shy and stuff like that, and I always wished I could be like the guy who gets all the girls or whatever, that kind of thing. Now that's kind of the situation, but there's the reality now that I'm good with this, and if I pursue anything with anybody, I feel obligated to tell them, and so there's that to it, and then it just kind of complicates things because you put yourself out there, and it's kind of hit when it's, I kind of, but I get it. But yeah, it's really hard to find somebody that fits into all that. And I did kind of find one person that got me the best with this out of everybody in my life, and it changed everything for me, like even sexually, because sexually I was kind of always in the middle. I was like a little submissive, a little dominant. It was always just right in that area. But then after with this girl, I could go to the extremes. I could go to extremely submissive, and then hardcore alpha male, which I had never really been. And so like it kind of made me more of a man. You know what I mean? Like, and so like that was really good. Like my sex life improved 100%. And that just came with 100% acceptance, right? So, so that was like, a really good thing to experience, and it was hard to let it go, but it's the age difference, right? You can't sustain a long-term relationship with that kind of age. Maybe you can, lots of people do, but it's hard to find a person that is that mature at that age.
Well, yeah, the stability issues of somebody that's youthful.
Yeah.
They're just, they're learning and growing and going through it all, and it's all new, and it's a roller coaster ride. I remember, not necessarily for myself, but from dating younger women when I was younger. So, you were so now, like we were talking, and you were joking about using a Tinder app for, and you would put yourself on as both. Like dressed up or just dressed up?
No, just straight dude or whatever.
Straight, oh, okay.
Yeah. And then if I met anyone that anything would have worked with, I would have told them. But no, there's no...
Where you were saying that some of the replies were pretty interesting and just almost crazy.
Just for a regular straight dude combos with these women, nothing was there. As I was asked to be a third in a relationship and stuff like that, and they didn't know anything about me, and I couldn't find any women my age, honestly.
So based on your straight look, because you're a good-looking guy, so based on your straight image on Tinder, they were trying to hook you up with a partner.
Well, no, there was a lot of that, and then just the women I found that did seem okay. It just didn't work. Like,
right.
You could tell right off the bat this isn't gonna last at all. Like, and it's great if you're gonna hook up and and fucking chuck, I guess. But like, I'm not wired that way, so I'm a relationship person, so one at a time.
So and that painting a picture of who you're pretty normal in that sense. It's not a sexual thing. Like it's not a dominating thing. So when you started to reach out or started to find a community, how was that experience? Like, because you would see men dressed up as women who are obvious men dressed up as women, and which would look odd for most people.
Yeah, it does to me too. So. And
then you had full on conversions basically, where there's no way you could tell, right? Like I when I was 18 years old, my aunt took me. She thought she was being funny. She took me to a gay bar. Didn't tell me or my cousin that was over from Hungary, and I had no clue. I mean, I walked in and the music was booming. I was like, it's a pretty good scene, right? And but something was odd. And as I'm walking along, and I think her name was Glenda, was in front, and she turned around, and as soon as she said it, she turned around and she goes, I think this is a gay bar. And as soon as she said that, this big man in his like mid-50s walked by in a full drag basically, and I went, holy fuck. It ended up being a great night though. I mean, it was pretty, I was in shock most of the night and drank, and it was just kind of observing the situation, and but it was a fun night all in all. But I remember that feeling. So I can imagine if I don't even know if I can imagine what it would be like to dress up for the first time and go into a scene like that?
It was actually pretty scary, you know, because I used to go to illusions as a guy, you know, like, because I was just that shy about it, right? And then when I finally did go, it was, at first it was scary as hell, and it was extremely liberating, you know, like, accepted, nobody gives a shit, and if anything, you're complimented and, you know, applauded for doing it, you know, like, and so it's kind of, it was nice, but one thing I've found, like, with people like me that do kind of go that far to go out in public once in a while or whatever, I found a small percentage are straight, and I think most of them are gay or whatever.
That's what I was just going to ask. Did you ever get hit on by
But yeah, I got hit on a lot. It's kind of, you kind of get to see what it's like to be a girl in a way, and not like the guys trying to buy you drinks or trying to get with you and stuff, and it's kind of awkward, right? Because it's like, yeah, no, it's like barking up the wrong tree, but, you know, nice to meet you, kind of thing. But so it's interesting, but it's very, you do kind of get to experience a little bit of what women do go through, and I feel for them. I guess guys are pigs. But yeah, it's definitely uncomfortable at times or whatever. But then you just learn to laugh with it and roll with it, and I've never had a situation where anybody was overly aggressive or anything like that. And if they were, then I'd friggin' nail them, you know. Like, a funny thing did happen one time when I only went out a few times, and I was leaving the place, and I had like this purse. It was like a backpack purse. I had my shit in, and good thing it was. And I was walking by an alley on the way to my vehicle, and a guy came and tried grabbing my purse, and two more guys came, and I'm thinking in my head in the moment, like, just ultimately you just feel like you're from your feet to your chest, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, I'm dressed up like a chick, I'm getting fucking mugged, like, what the fuck, like, what if I get beat up here and have to go to the hospital? And, like, so, like, I fought like my best fight, like, I freaking one punched one guy, the other guy beat the shit out of the third guy, ran away, and I kept the purse and everything like that, and fighting in heels is fucking hard. And but,
A
like,
video would have been awesome.
yeah, but I remember thinking afterwards, like, this is the last time I park that far away or anything like that, how I normally would as a dude.
Fair enough, yeah.
But dressed as a woman, you become a target, right?
Yeah.
And because you're in heels, you can't run, you know, you can't anything. And I wonder how many women do get mugged and get their purse taken.
Well, I mean, this is the one thing that keeps going, like, you know, like with the internet warriors and the internet deniers and whatever, like with the equal rights of women. I mean, I don't know any dudes, I guess, well, outside of yourself, maybe, when you're dressed up as a woman, that have to worry about a path home, because something can happen to them.
It's
And they're
very real.
raised with this idea that you got to be vigilant at all times and be careful. I never had to deal with that.
And I've only gone out like a handful of times.
Yeah.
And it happened to me just in that little bit of, you know, out of 5 times I think I've gone out like that. And out of those 5 times I got mugged.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, which is horrible.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably it was a really horrible experience, right? But so on, you know, you go through the relationships, and what about work? What about best friends? You know, how have you had to tackle any issues in that way?
Work will never know, just because to keep my life simple and uncomplicated. And then also, I don't want anything interfering with anybody in my family or anything like that. Like, I almost feel it'd be selfish for everybody to know, because then it affects too many people, right? So I try and just keep it to the really good people I know, like my friends and stuff like that. All my good friends, I haven't lost any. Nobody.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
Nobody's been like that. Everybody's been solid and supportive, if anything. So I've been lucky there. I know of people where they've been disowned by families and they've lost friends and, friends they've had for forever and stuff like that. I've been lucky that that hasn't happened to me.
Do you find, like we were talking before about depression and suicide?
Yeah.
Do you still struggle with that part of it from that, or is this something that you kind of got through?
When I wasn't good with it, it was very real. I was suicidal. I was very depressed. I didn't fit in the world. I felt like the dressing owned me or controlled me. I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to change it. I wish there was some way I could rewire my brain or something like that. And that struggle and like just not being so, having that part of me which is so different from how everybody sees me, and not being able to be that, because if I am, then I'm going to be seen as less, or not always, but like, to the people who aren't supposed to me or whatever, and it's all that. And so it was really hard, and there's a lot of times where I figured I was going to check out, just the world wasn't the place for me kind of thing. And as I got better with it, like now it doesn't play, it plays a little bit in that with the relationship thing. Like I'm a romantic, and I would love to, find love my life and live out my days and that kind of thing. But it's a very almost harder, impossible future for me to have, given that it's hard to find somebody that can fit into all of that.
So the struggle, really, right, for the most part, is the relationship aspect. Is trying to find somebody that can accept you in that light and allow you to.
It's not that they'd ever have to see it or anything like that, but like knowledge is
just
everything,
knowing,
right?
yeah.
And sometimes knowing is enough for people to not want that, really. And I understand that too, because like if I was the girl and like my man was like me or whatever, and I was great and all that, but there's guy number two and he's just like me, but he doesn't do that, and you might be inclined to go for guy number two.
Yeah. And you've actually had relationships where you've had that part of your life, but they never saw it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how was that?
One was really bad, like they used that situation to blackmail, bribes.
After oneself. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just as an opportunity for them to use me, right? And it's something that at the time nobody could ever dare know. Like,
right.
It was the end of my world. I would kill myself instantly if they got out, right? That's how bad I was with it.
But the relationship didn't tank because of that.
No,
she just ended it.
It was just something.
It's just something that was used later on.
Yeah.
Right. But she knew. And she knew that you did that, but she never actually was in that world. She didn't go with you to the club or whatever and indulge with you side by side. It was just something that you would do off on your own and come back, basically.
Yeah.
That's interesting. To me, that's just an in a relationship, it's an interest. Usually it's like everybody's so wrapped up in each other that you immerse into each other's lives. And so it's kind of,
Since then, all of my relationships have been good that way, though, where I could do that if, and it was all cool. Everything was good. Right.
And then, so the struggle that you have now is in a relationship part of it, but is there resources that you've been able to go to, like, do psychologists or groups or to give you the tools basically to cope with it and either learn to live with it or analyze, what resources do you have as somebody that has that? I shouldn't say has it, because that sounds like you have some sort of disease, which it's not, obviously. But what outlets do you have to reach out to?
Well, what I did do, because I did fear for my mental health, and there's people I need to be around for and live for, so I was worried about suicide and stuff like that, so I knew I really needed to address it. And everything I was reading and doing didn't seem to be working, so I did go to a psychologist. There's Insight Psychological, and they have psychologists that are trained in this field, like, and that was pretty helpful at the beginning, and to put that demon away, kind of thing, the suicidal thoughts. And then after that, honestly, it was just fortunate to have some really good friends who were able to make me look out of the black and start seeing a little bit of light. And then through process, and it was actually hard work, a lot of introspection, and being honest with myself and stuff like that. And it was hard to get good with it. And but in doing that, the black started disappearing. It became, a little corner of gray came, and then, everything was gray, and then more white started coming. It was kind of like then depression lifted, kind of thing, right? There's still a little bit of it there always with me, but I'm able to defeat it by doing positive things. But doing negative things, like, drinking and stuff like that, will definitely open that door. But yeah, I went to Insight for the psychological help, and then actually Illusions, just talking to, like, there weren't people just like me. There's varying degrees, like I said, like from like dude in the wig to, as close to transgender as you can get, kind of people being there. And so I would just talk to the ones that were most like me, and that was very helpful, especially the one individual who was straight and, and very much led a life exactly like mine, but they were a lot more out with it, a lot more, it was a bigger part of their life. But even still, like, it helped me a lot, and it helped me see that I wasn't alone, and here's this other person who's just like me and normal and smart, intelligent, and successful, and all that, and that just has this quirk with them too, or whatever, this oddity or whatever it is, right? And I know from everything I've read about it and all that there are piles and piles and piles, like thousands of straight men in marriages that do this, right? But they're not going to go out to a club or anything like that. They keep it at home. That's how I was most of my life too, right? Like it just stayed private and in-house kind of thing. But
I would imagine, like what you were saying with the one that you kind of connected with at the club, or what is it? Is it like, I don't know what Illusions is?
It's like it's a social club,
Mm-hmm.
and it's out by Grant McEwen there, and they get together. I think it's the first Friday of every month or second Friday of every month, and it's mostly structured for people like me just to get together, and they go out and they do shopping things or out for dinner, stuff like that. But for me, what I got from it was more just finding people like me, and
the people that you can see yourself in, basically, that aren't like the big guy that's just dressing up and looking odd. You are intelligent. The acceptance of seeing other people that are you, essentially, and I can imagine that would be quite liberating, or not necessarily liberating, but it would make you feel a lot more comfortable knowing that they're
less alone, less weird. I know it's still weird, and I get it. Like, I get it if somebody saw maybe, oh, that's weird or whatever, right? But a lot of people like weird, which is, kind of good too, right? But, so I know I'm going to get both sides of it. I'm going to get the people that are like, you're a freak, and die, whatever, and then you're going to get the people that go, oh, wow, that's really cool, let's go get a coffee or something. But,
no, I think knowledge is power, and then having conversations like this is important, so that if anybody's out there that has a kid, has a partner, has somebody that they know that is struggling through it, there are avenues. They're not alone, and you know,
These days it's a lot better. Like, when I was growing up, it was unheard of, and now it's shit, you got...
well, you were saying that the
cover
youth,
girl is a guy right now,
right? Yes.
So.
And you're saying even with the youth that's coming up, everybody slags the youth, but I have nothing but positive thoughts about that generation that's coming up because they are open. They know a lot of stuff is just bullshit rhetoric and
less racism, less
right.
sexism, less...
Yeah, it's obvious to them
hate.
basically that these things shouldn't be an issue, but for the older generations, it's been instilled in our brains that we can't think, be as open as we should. Whereas the youth right now, I truly believe that this is probably one of the best generations coming up for openness, for wanting equality and acceptance of that. So it's great, and it's great to see that society is slowly shifting and that. But I'm glad you came on. I know this is probably a bit nerve-wracking for you, but I thought it was an important... when you came out to me, we had a good long talk, and I'm pretty easygoing, so I've always, like I said to you when you said it, I don't give a shit. To me, it's all about whether you're a good person or not to other people, and that is what's important. Anything else is really trivial, but I'm glad that you came, and I know it was a big deal, probably. I'm going to assume you were a little bit nerve-wracked, and I appreciate it. I'm glad, hopefully we can have another one of these in the future and add to it. So
yeah, hopefully it helps anybody out there that deals with it or deals with somebody with it or whatever.
Awesome. All right, so that's the end of this podcast. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing one more video towards the 12 series of business owners' guides to personal bankruptcy. It'll be the second podcast on marketing, and I'm going to try to get as in-depth as possible without sounding boring on that. So stay tuned for that, and keep listening. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.